Hi folks, welcome to Thursday's edition of the iWrite Radio podcast stroke videocast. We've got two or three things. Richie Sunax announcement at Westminster, the First Minister's presser, as per usual. Lesley Riddoch's written a piece in the National that Stuart's going to give us a wee breakdown of. And I don't think Douglas Ross, the leader of the free world in Scotland, gets a pass on his attitude towards free school meals, because that drags in one or two interesting questions, I think, anyway. I've got Stuart Lockhead with me today. I'm not Stuart. I don't think Jimmy's joining us today. He's too busy trying to earn a crust. But, well, let's kick off with Sunak's announcement about, what, an hour and a half ago, I think. Excuse me, my voice is a bit rough today. So Richie Sunak stood up and did, what, an U-turn.
Is it an U-turn? Is it?
Well, as near as I can work out at the moment, it's gone from a 60% government wedge in to a 62% government wedge in.
No, but isn't it that the problem? It's if he'd simply tidied up, extended the furlough scheme and tidied that up, it would have been straightforward. Instead of that, he's brought in more complications.
Yeah, and there is a doubling of grants to the self-employed, blah, blah, blah. What he didn't mention was if there would be Barnett consequentials. That is being presumed, but as far as Scotland's concerned, we don't know if we're getting any money out of them or not.
Well, that's what I focused on. That his use of language was very precise. It was almost as if he was going to bung the money straight to Scottish councils rather than going to the, you know, judging by the way he said use the word direct cash money to local authorities, he said.
Well, that wouldn't surprise me. I've just felt for a while that they're looking for some way to stick it to the Scottish government. Somehow. And I think that's a path they might get away with by saying, no, this is going direct to councils. How it would work without an overarching scheme that applied nationwide, I don't know. But it would certainly put the cat among the pigeons were they to do that. I can't see them doing it. I think it would be a very stupid move.
Do you know something? I thought the First Minister in her press briefing gave more clarity on why the regional system of different restrictions in different regions works and why they're moving to it than anything from Westminster, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Tories want to be upfront about it, because I don't think it would look very nice if they were honest about it. I think they would have to say our priority is business, not health.
Although you've got to ask the question from a messaging point of view, how successful has it been imposing these restrictions exclusively on the north of England at the moment?
Well, I mean, that's got the headline, but I mean, there are lots of places that haven't been headlined. York, I think, was one of them. I mean, I don't know because they haven't been headlined. The argument that they had with the Manchester mayor put it front and center.
Well, I mean, they lost control of the messaging, didn't they?
Well, I think Andy Burnham can say he's been successful.
Well, there's an interesting point. It's raised the point that people on social media have been saying they should have picked Andy Burnham to lead the Labour Party instead of Keir Starmer. Well,
maybe, but I think when it comes out in the wash that we'll find that he's possibly getting what he asked for. Who knows? It was so bitty. I really don't want to commit to a statement about what he's actually, Sunas is given away. I'm
I-
just not confident that I got it right.
I've recorded it. I shall go and watch it later this afternoon and try and figure out what it is. What's different about what he said. What's different from what we had before.
Yeah.
And I'll also, it's really worth saying. I thought the response from Anneliese Dodds. Now there's a woman that's making waves. She's really getting, because of her role. She's not actually deputy leader to Keir Starmer, but she's Treasury spokesperson. So she's the second most important Labour politician in the country at the moment, and she's becoming more and more impressive the more you see of her. I have to say,
when she was first interviewed, when she first got the job, I wasn't impressed. But I think maybe the couple of bad interviews she gave has jilted her on. She certainly exudes competence at the moment.
And her summing up speech, which is it's a paragraph really. I haven't got it yet. That's another. But I was well impressed by that. She's well prepared for that. It really was punchy. I mean, if Sunak had to answer that, it would have been quite interesting. But he didn't have to really answer that part of it.
That actually, well, I'm not going to call it a U-turn. Let's call it an appraisal, a reappraisal. The sudden realization, and it's backdated, a lot of it, to August, which
too generous, I think.
Would surprise
you get
me.
The tax rebate, is that why you're being?
Well, I think maybe that's to do with the various grants he's giving to certain sections, the self-employed, etc. But it ties in, I think, with the latest dead dog, rather than dead cat that's been thrown on the table, which is the free school meals. I do not understand why the Tories are fighting over this. It just makes them look so bad. Why bother? I mean, it's peanuts in the scheme of things.
Well, look, Anneliese Dodds, the one thing she did sum up with, she talked about a TV series, and she talked about it like it was a winter economy plan, series 3. I think as I say, I'm going to have to go away and come back with I should have really got the clip ready for the show, because it was really excellent. I'm
not entirely sure that's a sound argument. I kind of fall on the side of the important thing at the moment through the pandemic is being prepared to change direction when it becomes obvious and necessary.
Well, he certainly made that point,
Well,
you are on a tax rebate, Norry. You've been awfully kind.
Well, no, I mean, I just think if you're not prepared to U-turn when the facts tell you to U-turn, you're not doing government the way it should be done.
I think she's right on this basis. He's been late. He's been left it late. There are all these businesses that have already closed, especially in hospitality.
Well, the whiff I got of it was, why wasn't all this planned for? Well, okay, that depends on when you started the plan. If you'd started the plan in March with the knowledge we had in March and you'd planned for 6 months, that plan would have been wrong. So long-term planning on this is not the smartest move.
I think there are businesses that folded in the last month that wouldn't have folded if he'd come out with this a month ago.
Well, yeah, but there are businesses that are going to fold. And you can't, I'm sorry, because of the changing aspects of it, I don't see how you can expect any government to lay down a solid plan, because they might have to change it.
Well, that's certainly the case that the First Minister makes all the time when she's asked about things like that. You've got to, it's a virus and you've got to change. You've got to be flexible. What did you think?
Sorry.
What did you think of, what's her name? Alison Thulis, the SNP spokesperson. She was left till after. He's not really he was a backbench Tory, was allowed to say some sort of rubbish, say how wonderful Sunak was and all the rest of it. according to what I got from the opening response from Alison Thulis, who unfortunately was on the line, she wasn't in the chamber. She seemed to say that she wasn't given a preview of the announcement, and yet it was very clear that Anneliese Dodds did have.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, this is an English issue. It seems to be the way that the Westminster government are looking at it. I mean, this is where your problem arises with devolution in terms of health. If England was to go ballistic over coronavirus and Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland managed to keep it under control, England you could well have a situation where England is throwing hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds at it, and Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland are garnering Barnett consequentials, which they possibly don't need. Or the other way around. What if Wales goes totally ballistic and the numbers in England drop? So there's no more money needed in England to subsidize businesses. If there's no consequentials going to Wales, where does Wales get the money?
I don't know.
Anyway, and that's
so convinced you're getting attacked. You've been so kind to Richie Sunak. You want him?
Oh, I'm not being kind to him. I'm simply saying that the idea that you can plan this over any distance into the future, I think is a foolish idea.
Can I pick you up on what you were saying about free school meals? Because obviously Douglas Ross, our Tory leader here in Scotland, has got a bit of a roasting over his vote on that the other day, has he not?
He abstained.
Yes,
having made it Scottish Tory policy a month ago that primary schools should get free school meals. So he abstained on a vote that was an English-only vote, I should add. 5 of his MPs voted in favour on an English-only vote.
Nobody cared, really.
Well, but it brings us to the next point. It's an English-only vote over which Barnett consequentials will be applied. So if the Tory government was to do a U-turn and decide to pay for it, there would be consequentials coming to Scotland, which we didn't get a vote on.
I don't think I'm not sure how it works. I mean,
that's how it works. Education is an English-only issue in England. So if they vote to give free school meals, remembering the devolved administrations have already extended.
Yeah, Norry, we've had 20 years of devolution and getting to know the Barnett consequentials. I know, and you know as well, it's not down to what they call granularity these days. It's a lump sum. This is how the Scottish governments over the years, even before the SNP government, were able to do things differently. If it was simply a question of, well, here's some more money for free school meals, spend it on free school meals, or ring-fenced. It's not ring-fenced.
Yes, but it's cash that should come for the Scottish government to then decide where to apportion it. Now, the Scottish government have already found money to extend the free school meals over Christmas. That decision's made. Wales have done the same. Ireland's done the same. But the money hasn't come from central government to cover that. There's no extra money for that decision. That's come out of the budgets that the devolved administrations already have. So what English votes for English laws have actually done is created the West Lothian question in favour of England. I mean, we've got Scottish MPs voting on English-only laws, actually putting their head above the parapet when they didn't have to say no to free school meals, when their policy in Scotland is apparently free school meals for primary school children.
Well, let's stick it to Douglas Ross here. They made a big play of this. Ross shared a Press and Journal piece telling Twitter, I just want to make sure no one falls through the cracks, and by giving this to all primary school pupils, we can make sure the offer is there for everyone. Now, the point was he was discussing his mum's work as a dinner lady and how that showed him the difference that providing these meals can make. It was a sort of, my God, it was a heartfelt thing from his heart and his mother and all the rest of it. And a month later, he's staying away from the vote. I mean,
well, he abstained on the vote.
It's hypocrisy.
Well, no, he hates the English.
He hates
Why
the
else
English.
would he do it?
Oh, he hates the English. Oh, God, that's the headline for today.
Well, he's differentiating between English school children and Scottish school children.
All right, that's a good one.
So why is he doing it? Has he got something against English school children?
That's a good point. I'll have to try that one.
I mean, 5 of his MPs voted in favour of this. Does he not control the Scottish Conservative Party?
Clear here, they did not vote in favour of free school meals in England.
They voted against the amendment. Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
Sorry.
So basically, hypocrisy writ large.
What did
he differentiates between English school pupils and Scottish school pupils.
Ian Blackford said, Ross should be ashamed. Reminded Twitter that the Scottish Government has already committed to free school meals over Christmas and Easter. Who's Emma Anwar? Was that
Is that not the lawyer?
The lawyer. Remember that time Douglas Murray said he cared enough to make sure no child falls through the cracks? Well, tonight, not a single Scottish Tory MP voted for free school meals. You see, it depends how it's presented. Not a single Scottish Tory MP voted for it.
Well, they claim they're a different party in Scotland, so I'm sorry they get called Scottish Tory MPs.
Never ever believe a promise from a Tory.
I've got an interesting one for you as well. God, what's her name? No, the front bench spokesman on. It was the debate about free school meals. And she apparently called one of the backbench Tory MPs scum.
Angela Rayner.
Which is simply an anachronism for Scottish MPs, Scottish Conservative and Unionist MPs. Scum. S Scottish, okay. C Conservative,
you are providing
Unionist,
yes,
and MPs.
Very good. Oh, well, I'm not sure if she did say it or not.
She did. She apologized later. Yeah.
Oh, did she? I'm usually quite impressed by her. She's
Angela Rayner.
Angela Rayner. She's good value.
Yeah.
Standing up there in the front bench, and so
she does get quite fiery.
She doesn't, and it's not much of a mistake. If it is a mistake, I would quite happily have said that.
Yeah, well, I knew I'd heard it before somewhere, and it popped up on Twitter. Scottish Conservative and Unionist MPs.
Oh, scum.
Scum.
But it didn't apply to the man in question, unfortunately.
Well, scum led by DRoss.
But the MP in particular was English.
You picked up a piece in the National today. Lesley Riddoch.
Lesley Riddoch, yes, Lesley Riddoch. Now, what did she say? Her headline is, London's treatment of North of England will boost the yes vote. Now, we touched on this yesterday, about we discussed it in terms of a power grab by central government, arguing about the money they could get for the Greater Manchester. It's been a big topic. It's hard for our viewers and listeners to have missed it. So I don't think we need to go into the detail of that. What she is saying is Westminster primacy has been challenged and Europe's most centralised state has been exposed and undermined. And for once, it wasn't Nicola Sturgeon on the naughty step. Mild-mannered, she brought in Mark Drakeford, Labour. He led the charge by using public health powers to announce a national 2-week firebreak lockdown, which starts tomorrow, with border restrictions. The greatest threat to the union comes from the so-called unionists, a thinly disguised puppet Boris Johnson, but it was Andy Burnham, And he was angry, wasn't he? He was angry. I mean, I'm sorry, we mentioned before we come on camera there that the man is, it's been suggested he should have been leading the Labour Party in the House of Commons instead of Keir Starmer. Not that Keir Starmer is useless, but they need somebody like Andy Burnham. The greatest, again, what did he say? Is this a game of poker? Is this what it's about? Was Andy Burnham's quote.
Well, the quote I saw from Andy Burnham that I thought was probably the best was, I'll paraphrase here. He basically said, why didn't they offer this to us, this new Sunak deal to us at the beginning of the week? Because apparently it would have satisfied what they were looking for.
Yesterday, I referred to what worried me was that the comparison was being made with Scotland's position and Wales's position with central government was being compared to councils in England. And that is a comparison that has been made in the past. A lot of English Tory MPs seem to think that whatever is good enough for a Lincolnshire council, it should be good enough for Scotland. However, Lesley Riddoch seems to think it's actually going to drive more people to vote yes. Where do you sit on that one? This current Stussy.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think there's anything this Tory government can do that is going to do anything but drive people to yes. I mean, be it Brexit or the pandemic, they've dealt with both of them with, you know, their hands tied behind their back, the brains put in neutral, and their feet in their mouth. They just seem incapable. You know, I mean, I'm not quite sure what's the right word for it, but it's almost like they're playing a game that has no relation to real life. It's like somebody's given them a set of instructions for a different game, and that's what they're using.
Steve Bannon's pulling the strings. Well, it's not him individually.
I don't think they're smart enough to have their strings pulled by Steve Bannon.
They are quite happy to head into chaos. They believe that out of chaos comes a new world, a new. Well,
you're suggesting there's a plan. I don't think there is a plan.
That gives them an excuse to make a mess of things, doesn't it? In their own heads, not towards you and me, but in their own minds. Well, it doesn't matter if we cause chaos. Well, it also explains the crazy rushing forward to the Brexit situation, which is it's more chaos.
I totally disagree with you, Stuart. I think they're stupid. I think they're reacting on fighting for short-term answers when they find themselves in difficulties.
They don't need short-term answers. They've got an 80-seat majority in 4.5 years before.
But they need answers for their wee rebellions. You know, I mean, if you look at the way they've reacted to everything, it's been, oh dear, people aren't happy with the new furlough scheme. We better change it. You know, 3 days later, they come up with some scheme. I just think they're incompetent. I think it's dangerous incompetence, but I can't see a plan behind this.
So Dominic Cummings isn't the brilliant genius that he thinks he is.
No, he isn't.
Did you happen to catch Mark Sidwell yesterday? The last cabinet secretary, senior civil servant to resign. He resigned in the spring. Now Lord Sidwell, he was interviewed. I saw it last night, I think probably on Newsnight, some of it. Fascinating stuff. You know, he was asked some challenging questions like that. You know, he didn't actually, is it chaos or anything like that, but it's worth having I can recommend viewers and listeners, go and seek that one out. Lord Sidwell, he's back, he's now, but he was the last cabinet secretary, the last civil servant in charge of the government, the real government.
And even accepting your theory is right, which I don't, but even if I were to, you don't need to be a genius to throw spanners. You just have to be able to accurately throw a spanner in the works.
I think all I'm saying about the Mark Sidwell interview is he didn't give, in the answers to the questions I saw, because I didn't see the interview from the beginning, he didn't seem to suggest that they were chaotic. He didn't. I think he was given an opportunity to say their government was rubbish, but he didn't. Given he'd left, you know.
Well, I just get the impression that they're governing like Boris Johnson lived his life. Grab the opportunity that comes, dump it when it becomes a millstone around your neck. Do and say anything to get you out of trouble at any given moment.
That raises the question, of course, is it Boris Johnson or Dominic Cummings together with Michael Gove that's actually running the government?
Well, I don't think it's Michael Gove.
I certainly don't think it's Boris Johnson. But Michael Gove's far more of a...
And I think if we're claiming it's Dominic Cummings, running the government is the wrong expression to use. Playing the game. You know, and I'm sorry, I don't think Dominic Cummings is playing three-dimensional chess. He's barely playing two-dimensional chess. If he is what you believe him to be, a disruptor.
Well, he definitely believes in disrupting, yes.
You don't need to be a genius to be a disruptor.
Yeah, well, no, I've never said you do.
You know, a bull in a china shop's a disruptor.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned China, because even if it was by accident, but Confucius, it is a kind of, if you think of Maoism was about overthrowing the deep state, or the swamp, as Trump would call it, you know, in Washington, the civil servants and the people that are there forever, regardless of which political party gets into power. That's the right. I mean, Maoism was a modern version of it, but it wasn't the left that adopted it as their motto. It was the right that's adopted it after it came out into the West, you know.
Well, I mean, I don't see it. I just think it's incompetence.
Oh well,
just that simple.
That's an extra worry.
well, I mean, competent.
We haven't got an incompetent government in Scotland, or do you think that's?
No, I don't. I think the Westminster government, as it stands now, is incompetent. The competent governments of the right that came before still allowed the money to run things. Thatcher, you know, that wasn't run by Tory MPs.
Thatcher had all of Scotland's oil money to spend.
Yeah, in order to dictate to us her monetary view, and it didn't work because she spent all the money and didn't make enough money to replace it.
She had so much money. She had the oil revenues. She had don't forget, they sold off all the nationalised assets. That was more money they had coming in. They sold off the family silver, and they sold off the gold standard, whatever the percentage they were getting off the oil.
Well, so right, let's move on. What else were we going to talk about?
Well, we haven't covered the presser yet.
Oh, well, the theme of the presser today was Christmas. Are you going to cancel Christmas?
Well, I need to know where I can hire a costume. I want to fire I don't even know what it looks like. The Grinch apparently is the man. You see, I'm from a generation that thinks, who spoiled Christmas? And that was Scrooge. But I gather the Grinch is somebody who spoiled Christmas. But
it's a Disney film.
Well, that's why I've never seen it. I gave up Disney.
Yeah, your kids are too old. It would have been your grandkids' generation.
Right. So I have no idea. I was thinking, I hate Christmas, and for personal reasons, I'm not going to go into the details of it. I've got into the habit of hating Christmas, so it won't make any difference to me if it's a digital Christmas.
Well, brings me back to my point about long-term planning under the present circumstances. Did they really believe that the First Minister was going to turn around and say, everybody's going to be locked down on the 25th of December?
Well, it was fun and games at the presser, because normally Jason Leitch, her chief medical director, he's really worth the money. She's done well with him because he's a great communicator. He probably does a wonderful after dinner speech. In fact, I'm sure he's been booked at big money by now after all these television appearances. However, she did have to have a wee go at him. Look, I'm not sure who's right and who's wrong. Where the word digital, it would appear the word digital Christmas was said, but I don't know. But I have it here in print. Somebody here, the media lies, it says, Media Monitor, what Professor Leitch actually said. I'm hopeful things now may get us a more family Christmas, but Christmas is not going to be normal. There's absolutely no question about that. We're not going to be in large family groupings with multiple families coming round. That is fiction. Now, the BBC Scotland News apparently turned that into the idea of a normal Christmas as a fiction, and Scots should prepare for digital celebrations. National Clinical Director Jason Leitch has said. Now, the bit after fiction is not in a quote. It's the BBC that's saying Scots should prepare for a digital Christmas, according to what I'm reading here. So who's right and who's wrong?
Well, it really doesn't matter because it's too far away to decide that anyway.
We shouldn't be trivializing it anyway. They've got more horrific data, more deaths, another 17 deaths. And apparently, did you get the figure for the infections in Lanarkshire? Because apparently there were
500 and odd?
The total
550?
Total of 1,700, 580 in Glasgow and less than 200 in Lothian. So somewhere in there, it must be close to 500 in Lanarkshire.
I think
she did say, she made a comment that we're worried about what was happening in Lanarkshire.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if the Old Firm game makes a difference.
I hadn't thought of that. That'll be another couple of weeks, I suppose, or a week and a half. What we got slightly further forward with the strategy that's going to be published. It's got different aspects to it. We're waiting for the details on what the tiers, as they keep calling them, but I have a funny feeling they're going to be called levels here in Scotland, just to differentiate them. So they can't be exactly compared with what's happened in England. What we did get was some progress on information about testing, in particular processing of the testing. And she said we'd get more details published tomorrow, but she said they'd be doing capacity of testing will go up to £65,000. How often is that? A day.
Yeah.
But by the end of the year, the Lighthouse Labs, which when it gets complicated to count these in, 10,000 more a day they're going to do. The NHS will be doing 22,000 a day, and they've got some new ones starting up.
More a day, and they're bringing on board some new laboratory space.
Yeah, three new laboratories, one in Lothian, one in Grampian, and one in Greater Glasgow. And she got asked by, I think it was the Sun journalist, why now? You did say that it would be that capacity by winter, but now you're saying it's by the end of the year. Well, to be honest, the First Minister was clearly, she said, as far as she's concerned, the end of the year is winter.
Because we run by a Westminster autumn, which is November, according to Westminster.
Now, another thing to note was, given that this fellow only turns up at these briefings unless he's got a story to trail for Channel 4 News, Kieran Andrews. So he popped up. He doesn't come to these briefings regularly.
Well,
so
he's
not every. No, he's not there every day. He only pops up when he's got a story on Channel 4 News. So he's clearly got a story on Channel 4 News tonight. He focuses on care home deaths. And what's his story going to be tonight? Apparently, there's a police inquiry. They're now investigating in depth, as he said. They're going into the care homes and doing long interviews.
That's not news.
That's what I mean. That's exactly, you're agreeing with me. I'm simply saying that he's popped up at the press briefing to ask a question about this, simply because he's almost certainly going to be on Channel 4 News tonight saying there's a police inquiry. And
that was asked for by families about a month and a half ago. That was the headline a month and a half ago. Families want police inquiry into deaths.
Right. So if I just repeat what I've just said, and it kind of explains things. The only extra information, apart from the fact that the police are now investigating, was that they were investigating in depth. I think he even said they were taking, there were long interviews or something like that. I mean, you could get that from talking to the cleaner in the care home, couldn't you? Without getting an official quote from anybody.
Well, it's because of Scotland Yard. Scotland Yard have 3 levels of inquiry: black people inquiry, blackish, whitish people inquiry, and white people inquiry. The white people inquiry is in depth. The other 2, they just skim the surface.
Oh, right. Okay.
I was watching Newsnight last night, mate.
Oh, okay. I'll need to watch that. Now, I was fascinated by Fraser Knight of Global. He was trying to do a sort of Global that's local radio. No, it's not local radio. It's commercial radio. But he tries quite regularly to be a tabloid journalist. But they're right enough, they don't have long to tell you the news on commercial radio, do they? It's about 3 minutes max. When you consider how much news we've got to pile in.
What was his question?
What's his question? Oh, he was asking about Santa. Was Santa going to Zoom? And I mean, I'm thinking, how old were your children when you told them that Santa wasn't real?
I didn't tell them. They found out for themselves.
And how old do you think they were? Before they went to school, for sure. Otherwise, somebody at school would have told them.
Well, the most interesting thing about that question was the in-depth answer that Sturgeon gave, assuring all these young children that Santa would be running to the house with presents as per normal, because he was a
key worker.
Exactly.
And he has magic powers.
And magic powers.
Magic powers. However, she did make a mistake. She used the phrase, "Don't expect me to do everything for you, but I would have let me be your own listener." But she used the phrase. She didn't say that she was going to cancel Christmas and shut the pubs, but she said that in a longer sentence. But that doesn't stop the tabloid press using that phrase, because she did actually say cancel Christmas and shut pubs. So you can expect that to be used, even though it'll be out of context. I don't know if there's much else there.
Well, I was about to say, I hope not. I'm getting bored. And I'm interested in it.
I was bored watching it. I'll just check that I've got a cross against here. Christine Lavelle, no, we've covered that. One last thing. I've forgotten about, do you remember when we came out of lockdown? It was delayed compared to England.
Yes.
And there were phases. So
yes.
There was a question about the phases, and she did say, she was asked about, I think, what level 1 would be like under the tier 1 would be like. Would it be like so-and-so? And she said, well, it might be a bit like phase 3. And I'm left wondering, what was phase 3 like?
I was a bit disappointed. I was kind of hoping that what she would do right at the start was say, we're publishing the various levels we're going to use tomorrow, so I'm not answering any questions on it. And every time they got a question on it, she could have gone, nope, not answering that, bugger off.
She did get asked
she should get a buzzer.
About the law. They had a go at her about, there was a court case in Glasgow where a restaurant pretended to be a cafe, and the council tried to shut them down, so they took them, the council, to court
and won the case. The story around that is they had been operating as a cafe, not a restaurant. That was their argument when they went to court, and they won the argument.
Well, as far as I know, a lot of these Italian places that are open all day, you could call them a cafe. Even there are restaurants that are open all day and only close. They close at 8 o'clock at night or something. Generally speaking,
which could mean the next time there's a lockdown, the cafes will get shut as well.
You think about it. You go to John Lewis's and go upstairs to the top floor.
Well, she'll be able to turn around next time and say, due to all the court cases and misunderstanding about what constitutes a cafe, we've decided to shut all cafes. And Mrs. Smith, who took this to court's address is, go and complain to her.
Okay.
We'll see.
I have to thank you, by the way, Norry. I have to thank you for giving me the headline today. I've got to choose between he hates the English or scum.
Well, why not just put scum hate the English?
I think I might just put that.
You'll have to explain it, though.
You don't have to explain a headline. It's all right.
Well, you do, that one. I picked up an old clip from the good old days when we had
Bastard.
Yes, Alan Bastard.
Oh, Rick Mail, wonderful man.
So I'm going to play us out with that, just to give us a wee laugh. What I noticed most about this is that this could very nearly be a Brexiteer Tory MP speaking. It's not really that funny when you consider where we are now.
No,
so here we go, folks. I'll say cheerio for now. Cheerio from Stuart.
Bye-bye.
Cheerio from me, Norry Stuart. And thanks for listening. We'll play you out with Alan Bastard, Rick Mail. We'll get there in the end, honest.
If we could return to your political principles.
Of course, Mark. As I said, they are 4 in number. By freedom, I mean complete freedom. The liberty of the citizen to do whatever he wishes within the most libertarian framework of the law. He should be free to take drugs if he wishes, to indulge in whatever sexual acts his imagination can devise, to drink whenever he wants to shop whenever he wants to. Low taxation follows automatically. The legalized trade in drugs and pornography will contribute enormous amounts of VAT, allowing income tax to be abolished on all, except the lowest paid.
But the poorest would continue to pay income tax.
Someone has to.
Why?
Well, because poor people vote Labour, and so they'll get no favours from me. And the poor are the biggest consumers of government spending, which brings me neatly on to my third point. The elimination of restrictive employment legislation. Quite simply, we don't need any. When was this country the leading industrial power in the world? When we sent children up chimneys, women down mines, and trade unionists to Australia. No coincidence, I contend.
Let me make sure I understand you correctly. Essentially, you seem to be suggesting a return to the industrial environment of the early 19th century.
I am.
Before the abolition of slavery.
I think you make my point for me. And don't be so pious, Brian. We both know slavery still exists in many societies.
You're thinking of the forced labourers of the Indian subcontinent.
I'm thinking of the poor bugger who until last month was running British Gas on a pathetic $250,000 a year. And my fourth point, which again fits perfectly into my overview, concerns the welfare state. In my opinion, this is the single most disastrous development of post-war social policy. It has made people unfit, lazy and self-indulgent. I mean, the ordinaries know that free medical care awaits them, so what incentive do they have to stay well? As I said, on the record, in 1987, in the good old days, you were poor, you got ill, you died. Today we face the appalling prospect of young, fit, virile men like myself giving up to taxation a larger and larger proportion of our wealth to support ailing, aging people like yourself.
Yeah, laugh on the other side of your face, mate.
Oh, dear.
That was Rick Mayo as Alan Bastard, Tory MP. So we'll call it a day at that. As I say, thanks for listening, folks, and we'll catch up with you tomorrow.